Hey, how are you?
Thank you for your vote on HB 65, the fetal protection act.
Yes, no problem. It was. I didn't support the overall budget, but I did.
Yeah.
I had to support that piece of legislation.
So let's get started. First of all, thank you all for coming. We've been, of course, very involved with the pandemic for a long, long time. And we used to hold these every month. Then we suspended during the COVID period. I think our last one was either February or March of 2020. So I know everybody is really glad to be out, and we've got a good crowd, so I want to thank you all for coming to discuss our beloved city of Nashville. I want to introduce you all to public officials that are here. First, from the Board of Aldermen, Tom Logan, who is Ward 4, Ernie Jetty, Ward 5, Trish Lee, Ward 3, I was about to say 6, 4, 5, 6. I don't think there are any other members of the Board of Aldermen. No. We have Cindy Rosenwald, the state senator. Thank you. Maria, this is Milford.
Well, you're always welcome.
Mike Peterson, a state rep. Gloria Timmons from the school board.
Okay.
Stacie Laughton, a state rep. Sherry Dussey, a state rep. Laura Zaworsky, a state rep. That's it. Matt Plant, a police commissioner. Anyway, so what we usually do is we talk about a few different issues and then open it to questions. But we have Sarah Marchand here to talk a little bit about the master plan. Now, we try to keep we don't want to spend all the time talking about any one subject, so we try to move on from things even if they involve quite a bit of discussion. So please keep that in mind. So some of the things that have gone on recently, of course, the pandemic we've been dealing with for all these months. The numbers for Nashua are good at this point. The number of cases is way, way down. The number of hospitalizations is practically zero. But, we still have to exercise caution because we have this emerging Delta variant, more dangerous in terms of its transmissibility, and maybe more dangerous to younger people. So I would urge everyone to get vaccinated if you're not vaccinated. Vaccinations are proven and safe, and they will protect you and your family from what could be a very serious disease. Now, so let's talk about a few of the things that are going on, other things that are going on in the city. The budget just passed. Now, we went into the year in a very difficult situation, budget-wise, because the state of New Hampshire informed us of 2 actions which were going to have a severe impact on local property taxes. And those things were, first of all, the pension costs increased by $4.4 million. Nothing to do with the current employees or we could get into that a little bit. So basically to increase the assets of the pension system up in Concord. And they informed us that we were likely to suffer a $7.5 million loss of reduction in school aid. So when you put those things together, it comes to almost $12 million. That puts the city in a $12 million hole. $12 million translates to about a 6% tax. So I took the approach that we needed to be frugal to try to offset these costs, these state impacts over which we have little control or no control. I asked the departments to come in at zero if they possibly could, and many of them did. City Hall budget is down this year, starting July, 2.9%. Now that was difficult, no question about it, but people made sacrifices and set priorities. The library down about 1.9. Public Works down about 1.3. Now I asked our other departments to do as the same. We had some disagreement regarding the uniform services, fire and police. They said they couldn't possibly live with that. So we had this extensive discussion about it, and when you're a public official, you have to balance the need for services with the ability of people to pay. We have people trying to age in place in our resident, our older people. Higher taxes for them are a big problem, and along with everyone else, people work hard to pay that money. So, as a compromise measure, I proposed to fire and police that we go to I proposed to the aldermen a 1.7% increase, which is the cost of living. Now, they said they couldn't live with that. Fire was at 4. This doesn't even include the cost of pensions, because we don't control it, we took it out. With pensions in, it's much higher than that. But fire said they couldn't do with less than 4, police closer to 3, but I proposed 1.7. The alderman subsequently raised my budget to basically meet the request of those departments. I proposed then a subsequent compromise to go. So I reduced those bottom lines halfway between what the alderman passed and what I had originally proposed. They said they couldn't live with that, and then the alderman overrode my budget, overrode the veto on a pretty one-sided vote. Although a couple of Trish and Ernie voted to sustain the veto. Now, we may be getting some better news on the school aid. We've seen some things from the Department of Ed, indicating we might not suffer quite the loss that they had said we would. So we need to, but the budget person, Dan Donovan, from the school department is gone this week, so we can't really confirm anything without talking with him, so there's some uncertainty. But that may have happened in the state budget. So that was more news later. Other things that are going on are, of course, we've got the school street housing. Well, before we leave the budget, we're in the middle of a revaluation now. People are going around, this is a state-ordered revaluation. One thing we do need to be concerned about, which we really again have no control over, is that residential values have gone up so much that they may have outstripped or gone up more than commercial values. And did I introduce Sherry Dutson?
Yes, thank you again. Twice.
They may have gone up more than commercial values, and we're constantly examining that information, but if they have gone up more than commercial values, that will result in a shift of the burden of the whole property tax from commercial to residential. In other words, if commercial went up, residential went up 40% and commercial went up 10. If you do that math, you would see that would push more of the burden onto local residents. But we're watching that very carefully, and we'll keep you informed as we get more information. But it looks like that's likely to happen. Other things that are going on, of course, the Performing Arts Center is on its way and in construction, scheduled to open in the fall of next year. There's a middle school project going on, which is
I'm here.
to replace Elm Street and expand the other two middle schools. A major step forward in terms of middle school education. That may be done by the fall of 2023, but could be pushed to the fall of 2024. We talked before about the School Street housing over here. That looks like it's on track. Just a block or two away, that is 150 units of downtown housing. I've been working to try to get downtown housing for all the years that I've been in office, since I was elected. We need to bring more people downtown. The goal is, along with the Performing Arts Center, to build a stronger downtown economy, to generate more taxes from the downtown, which is now in this little square mile, $6 million. We want to build that to a higher number. And the School Street housing will be an investment of private investment. Private investment of more than $30 million. We're going to get to the master plan very quickly, which is a very important subject. There's an issue going on regarding whether we should have local control of the National Police Commission. Briefly, we're the only city in New Hampshire where the state appoints the police commissioners. There used to be a whole lot of other cities in the state that had this system, all elected to go to more accountable, visible systems of local control. So there's a proposed ballot measure before the Board of Aldermen and a petition drive to make the appointments local and have them confirmed by the Board of Aldermen and vetted right down at City Hall. Asma, please raise your hand. She's part of the petition drive. She's getting signatures, so if you'd like to get help with 1,500 signatures, which is required to put it on the ballot, she is here. Now I think we want to deal with the master plan and tell you a little about what's going on. Now the master plan looks at the future of the community from a land use perspective, and the over 2,000 people, right, have been involved in this through either in person, mostly online, right?
Correct.
Because during the pandemic we had to do all of the interactions online. The idea is to look at the future of the community in terms of what we want it to look like, and of course some major areas of focus of the South End, because the neighborhoods are pretty much set the way they are. We don't want things to change a lot there, but the areas which are likely to evolve and change are downtown, Amherst Street, South End, those areas of the city. Now, Sarah Marchant is the Director of Community Development and has been principally responsible for the master plan, and we have a consultant as well, but and she's just going to talk a little bit about it and show you since we're here right on Main Street, what the many people, 2,000 people that have provided input are thinking so far. We do have a citizens kind of guidance or oversight committee are thinking regarding Main Street and some of the downtown streets. So with that, I will give you Sarah.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Nice to see you.
Good morning.
I'm going to pass out a couple of these. I'll talk and pass, but I do have a mom voice, so hopefully you can all hear me. So the front side is if you're looking straight down on Main Street, it's a design that shows kind of continuing with the idea of the widened sidewalks, all the ability to have seating and protected bike lanes, along with the addition of trees, so that we can have more of a reduction of our urban heat island. And on the back side is kind of is a street view, which shows the protected bike lane. It shows the street trees, and it shows some of the expanded dining area. So what we've been talking a lot about is how much of a place Main Street is and how much of a community building asset this is with its connections to the riverfront as the riverfront is being developed, and its connections also looking down South Main Street and kind of continuing some of, not necessarily the expanded sidewalk, but the ability to infill and to be able to create a positive public space for the community to thrive in. And so those are some of the ideas that have come from this group that have been really well supported by the community as a long-term plan and as part of prioritizing people and places and spaces and our business community downtown instead of just cars. And with that comes some good discussion about the alternate routing of traffic, right? And making sure there are those clean other ways to travel so that you can still get where you need to go, but with also being able to kind of to keep our space in place. There's a whole bunch of other parts to the master plan. This is one smaller part, but I think I saw a question, and I did, but I think it's happening right now. And what we do need to do, and I think it's been really clear from the community, is adding additional signage to redirect people to some of the side streets. We do have some alternate streets, right? And maybe some of those are one way of getting into the habit of using those, better signage, better direction. And we have literally hundreds and hundreds of parking spaces within a 2-minute walk of Main Street. And they are not full. So even though maybe you don't have the parking directly in front of every store, there is a tremendous amount of parking downtown that is underutilized. And I think I would challenge you to think of your favorite communities and your favorite cities that you visit, and how many of them can you park wherever you want in front of any store. I think a community that doesn't have a parking problem doesn't have a downtown. Right? So I think it's important to keep in mind that a lot of that vibrancy is based on the people and the businesses and the interaction of those places, and how important that really is. It is the exact same number. Sure. So the question was, she heard that there's a severe shortage of handicapped parking spaces. There's the exact same number of handicapped parking spaces now as there was before the barriers now. So, yes, sir.
As traffic gets back to normal, do you foresee traffic becoming an issue? Because although you could take side streets or other routes, there are one-way, a lot of people park on those streets. So do you feel like those neighborhoods will start to have traffic congestion? And is there a plan for new roads or whatever? How is that?
Sure. So the
I want
question.
to repeat the question, so everybody.
That's fine.
So the question is, as traffic gets back to normal, as people are getting out and about again, is there more of a concern with additional congestion or the impact to those side street
Right.
neighborhoods?
And then would there be a plan for new roads or widening streets or whatever?
Yes, so the master plan is a high-level document. It's not an engineering transportation study, but it is in the top goals and recommendations. It is absolutely talking about looking at our downtown circulation as a whole and making sure that we can accommodate the traffic as it flows. Some of the concern, and so that's the next step, right? Before we put this permanently in place, because this isn't tomorrow, right? These are longer term. Is that it's hard for us to understand exactly how the world has changed and what the traffic looks like. And so studying it now, based on the numbers now and based on the community now, and as it kind of comes back, is a really important pieces of data to be able to make those long-term decisions that are in the best for the city.
Good question. So it looks like just based on this proposal, you're looking at keeping the barriers in place as a permanent outdoor dining arrangement potentially, and that's one. And the second one is the study that you're gonna do, the road engineering study. number of apartments and living spaces downtown. So that, and that's gonna impact it along with the big non-Temple Street and then,
I mean, the problem I have is they want to have more biking there, so that way you have bicycles get through there, and those scooters and stuff, because that's,
Sure.
get a lot of traffic.
So 2 questions. I will.
Not everyone can hear these questions, so you need to at least paraphrase the question.
So the first question was, it appears the barriers are becoming permanent, and asking if that's true. The second question, just so I don't forget, is how in this traffic studies and looking at downtown circulation, are we including the increase in housing that's coming downtown as well? So the first question is, that plan is not barriers. This is a long-term plan, and it's an expansion of sidewalks. It's an expansion, it's a redesign of the main street. So again, it is not a tomorrow, but it is a redesign of the main street and intersections and how everything works. So that goes with that downtown study. The second question is a very good one. And so with that study that hasn't been done yet, right, that's coming in the future, we will accommodate we will have more data and information on some of these things. But I will say we have been partnering with the Regional Planning Commission, located in that building right up there, that's why I'm pointing to them, to do counts now and last summer and this summer, both on cars, but also on pedestrians and bikes. So less so on bikes, it's harder, or the scooters, so that we can understand both pedestrians and traffic as we've been evolving. The second question is a very good one as well. What are we doing about traffic related to additional housing? So the MUTEC, which is essentially kind of this engineering standard guide for how many parking spaces you need for different kinds of uses, was recently updated for urban, and it has a little bit different numbers for how many parking spaces are needed for residential based on a lot of data. So we look at that, but in addition, as every plan comes before the planning board, it has to have a traffic study. Some are shorter, some are longer, and those studies are part of every planning board approval. And so those are part of the decisions that are made at that time. As we're looking at the larger circulation plan and those kind of studies, we would absolutely be including and giving to the engineers at that time any pipeline projects, right? So projects that are most likely a pipeline that are not reflected in the existing, and they use that MUTCD guide to project the number of cars that would be coming from any individual project based on the number of housing units.
Now, I wanted to interject 2 things, maybe 3. This part is
I don't know yet. I think it could. Yes.
There's a possibility there are plans to see this building across the street converted to housing. So we're hoping for that, but we're not positive.
No changes to the exterior, only interior, 17 housing, 17 kind of condo units.
Mary Ann Luigi Goli is here.
I just trying to get
He's
coffee.
former
Was always welcome.
She's very involved in something we could mention, which is National Back to School. It's coming up. You've been involved for what? 17 years. So thank you, Mary Ann. Now, this is Tom Lopez. He is on the infrastructure committee. He wanted to mention something about the traffic issue. And he's going to, so we're going to turn over to Tom for a moment.
So the barriers are by aldermanic legislation, like city ordinance. We do have to continue revising that every year. It's only extended to this year. We did have an initial presentation at the infrastructure committee about what we were going to do over the next 2 or 3 years, which all of us are a little like hesitant because we're all half of us are running for re-election, so we're like, what are we going to do for the next couple of years? So we are working with Director Cummings on coming up with a plan. And what he had proposed in the May meeting was, do we want to use the barriers as a temporary lead up to something? What the aldermen were pretty consistent about was, if we are going to lead up to something, we want to know what the something is going to look like. So the idea behind the barriers is they're not going to be a permanent fixture. Those barriers aren't even going to last. And Director Marchand can give me a better estimate, but like more than 3 or 4 years, because every time we move them, we lose a little piece of that artwork. So they're just a temporary fit for the end of this year. We do have to continue renewing for subsequent years, but we also need the city planning process through the master planning to figure out what a study or what a downtown plan would look like, because we want to be guided by the master plan. So we are working on it in that particular manner, and it's not already set in stone as an indefinite fixture. But it is a helpful fixture, and it has a lot more reasoning behind it than just, oh, there was a pandemic, so we were trying to help businesses stay open through the pandemic. In terms of economics, downtown has always had struggles. If you come here during January or February, very difficult for businesses to survive during those periods of time. So the boost that they're getting from the outdoor dining now, can see them through that. And hopefully we'll see a little bit less turnover. There's other reasons for it other than just the pandemic economic boost. We have to consider those reasons and the benefit they give to restaurants against what happens with retail. And that's what we're going to be doing at the infrastructure committee in the short term, in conjunction with the longer term semester.
I think what we found with the barriers is, although initially designed to save the restaurants, which they did, this was in May of last year, completely changed the atmosphere of downtown. Much, much more people friendly, a lot more people downtown than were ever here before. And so that has been almost an unintended side effect. And so that is the reason I think the master planning committee is talking about trying to continue this on a total restructure of Main Street, because the people-oriented downtown is essential to a lively, successful city, really. So I know we will see this whole thing evolve over the years. Now, does anybody have any more comments, questions about the master plan for Sarah, or yes, Stacie?
Just want to make sure, I'm Stacie Laughton, also a state rep. Just wanted to make sure that when you go over this master plan, like some people here are familiar with my wife who passed away, and in her end time she was in a wheelchair. And even with the sidewalks we have now, the brick sections where they dip down was a challenge for her every time we'd hit one of those. And so when you go over the master plan, definitely keep in mind those with disabilities, and especially those like Lisa, who had oversized wheelchairs and not just your standard size, that were more comfortable to take in some bumps or whatnot. She had a special geriatric wheelchair, and the certain sections, even of the current new sidewalk that we've had the last few years, was bad. So just keep in mind all citizens, including those in wheelchairs.
Thank you. I think that's a great point. And it is, we have actually had some really great conversations repeatedly, even though they're over Zoom, but we have a great focus group at the Plus Company, and they have given us a lot of great ideas about how we can do better, handicap friendly, not only on our Main Street, but our connections to trails, our connections to housing, and our connections to transportation. And they've been a fantastic voice. And it's really great to have somebody like that at the table kind of giving so much feedback. So just as a larger part of the master plan, we talked about one of, I can't even tell you how many kind of goals we have right now that we're putting some measurable metrics to, but if you have more, if you're interested, check out imagine.nashuanh.gov. Again, imagine.nashuanh.gov. We are coming to the end of the master planning process. We should have a draft before the end of the summer to be able to share with all of you again, and then bring forward to the planning board and the board of aldermen for final approval. So it's been a great event. Yes, sir.
One question. Because I filled out the thing online. And it was like Christmas. Of course, I want everything on the list. But so how do you blend in possible?
That is a. So his question is, he's looked online and he supports generally the things online. They all look great, but we can't do everything all at once, right? And so how do we have cost constraints on the wish list that kind of is the master plan? And that's a great question. So right now we're working on. We've been working the last couple months. We've been at the library, at different places, and we've been talking about prioritization first, right? So what are our highest priorities, and where should we then talk to the mayor and the board of aldermen about prioritizing those kind of items first? but also we're talking about measurable goals, right? So what are those processes and what are the timelines and horizons? There are things that we need to focus on first that are short-term priorities, and there are also things that are much longer-term priorities, and will have a lot longer term to carry out. As we are all very aware, and the mayor just talked about, right? The budget is a massive, very important constraint, and so it's fitting these things in. In addition, we have been incredibly successful, lucky to receive a lot of different federal grants and different kinds of grants that have helped us to do a lot of improvements that have gone on so far, and we will continue to pursue those. And this master plan is a very, very important piece of being able to be competitive for those grants, because what we can say is the community wants this, we can't fund it, we need your help, but the community already wants this, and that makes grant funders interested in giving money to the city, because it's not necessarily going to be something that you don't support yet. You've already built that, you've already gotten that support. You're welcome. And just real quick, can I give a shout out to this? Your voice, your choice. So just real quick, another project we have going on right now is the Your Voice, Your Choice in the Tree Streets neighborhood. It's a participatory budgeting project. The mayor set aside $40,000 to be spent in that neighborhood, however they choose, or you choose. And so I do have little bookmarks here that point you to that website. It's a really amazing process, and I strongly encourage you to kind of get involved. And so I do have these as well, and I'll put them somewhere where you can get them.
Now this Your Choice, Your Voice, we ran this 2 years ago. We skipped the pandemic year because it involves a lot of public input down, usually at PAL and elsewhere around the tree streets. So we allocated then $25,000, and the idea was the neighborhood came up with 8 or 10 projects that could be funded with that amount of money. And then people voted on which project they wanted. And what they came up with was a futsal court, which is a enclosed soccer court that can be used in a congested urban area for the kids to play on and develop soccer skills. And that was done right across from PAL on Ash Street, and it gets a lot of kids use it.
Adults do.
Yeah.
Adults
All the
do.
pro leagues are using it. We had a tournament.
So it gets a lot of use. So that came out to be interesting because never would we have thought of that. I think this came from a 8 or 9-year-old boy. Was the originator of the idea. So anyway, we're going to do that project again this year.
And just imagine what that does with that 8-year-old for feeling like he has some say in the community and his friends. Like that's huge to be able to say, I would like this project done, and then seeing it done within a year.
Now, does anybody have any further questions, Matt, on the master plan, or? She's saying, come on in.
Sharon?
Yes, Sherry.
Yeah, Sarah talked about federal grants that might be coming through. Since there's the cap, the tax cap, and it's my understanding that under the tax cap, we would not be able to accept grants. How is that going to be done?
Well, it is somewhat unclear right now, but this is, you're talking about the action that was taken by the legislature.
Exactly.
It is somewhat unclear, so we're going to have to work through that. But some of the federal grants that we definitely have pending are, we did get a grant for French Hill to redo, which the money hasn't come through, but to redo Lock Street, expand the sidewalks and Whitney Street. Trish was very involved there. We have a grant to expand the rail trail going east from City Hall to Henry Hangar, another downtown housing project, which looks like it's going to go ahead.
Yes.
Pretty definitely. That will become 88 units of housing for the downtown. Now, in terms of the way the grants are going to work, we will have to work through that. There can always be a debt exclusion. The thing is so it's complicated. But we're going to try to avoid an outcome where we can't accept the federal grant. Obviously, anytime we can bring money into the city, that's a good thing.
We did build some. There was a bar on the reserve by off the South Main Street neighborhood. There's a metal recycling operation down there.
Yep.
Okay.
And it's right on the river, it's a beautiful spot.
Yep.
And there was a park there, I don't know. I mean, do you know anything about it?
That is not necessarily in this master plan going forward. That area is still a metal recycling facility. So she's talking, I'm pretty sure you're talking about on the other side of 25 Crown Street, one of the city's future rail stations.
At the end of East Glenwood. right?
Yes. Yep. Yep. Yep.
So this is this has been there a long time. There was at one point a proposal to expand it to what was it, an asphalt recycling plant or something? We blocked that. So we don't know what's going to happen. That owner eventually will propose something, but we don't know, what they might propose or how long this is a grandfather date. We don't know how long, that will remain in effect, but likely at some point there'll be a proposal to do something different there.
But then
Yeah.
at one time there was a park in the master plan.
A park would be wonderful. A park would be wonderful.
Well,
Now
yeah.
we have to, of course, buy the land. I'm sure it would be millions.
With all of our money.
Just take it.
All right, any other subjects? So thank you, Sarah. Thank you very much. Any other? Yes.
You mentioned the rail trail going east, if you could update us on that. And also down on the river, I see that they're cutting out the tree stumps now and kind of where things are going.
So the two questions are, what about the rail trail east? Where are we with that? And the riverfront, what's going on there, basically? So we have received a grant to extend the rail trail from, and you remember, the current rail trail goes from City Hall west to about Simon Street. The major, people use that much more than the sidewalks on Hollis Street. So we've received a grant to run the rail trail east from Main Street to Henry Hanger, basically, along the former rail line. That is in design right now. We expect the design to be completed by the end of the year, and therefore construction next year, 2022. The riverfront, we have a riverfront master plan, which was completed and adopted by the Board of Aldermen several years ago. There is a funding source for it. There is a so-called tax increment financing district around the river, which captures any increases in property values and in a certain defined area and dedicates them to the riverfront improvements. That, so there are, if you go online, where do we look at that online?
You can go to the community development page. It's the riverfront, the downtown riverfront master plan. You can just Google it; it'll pop up.
Riverfront master plan. It's very, it looks great. Those features are also in design right now. Now that is a complicated project to design. It's a whole set of riverfront improvements from the bridge, Main Street to the west. The lighting has already gone in. And then to the east, where the walkways, the river walkways and all will be improved and landscaped and everything. It includes docks, an expanded Renaissance Park. That again has the funding source, but in design. A complicated project to design because it is a riverfront project, so it involves DES, the environmental agency up in Concord. They have to be involved. So we think the design will be finished by the end of the year, and further implementation will take place next year. But again, the lighting on the north side of the river and of the Cotton Transfer Bridge did go forward this year.
So we're not planning to do that one statue.
We might have to. So all right, any other? Yes.
John, can you see us on Daniel Webster College property?
Yeah, good question.
So the question has to do with the status of Daniel Webster College. And so the answer is we're not sure what's going to happen. The owner of Daniel Webster College is someone from China who purchased it out of a bankruptcy auction because of the company that eventually bought Daniel Webster went into bankruptcy in Indiana. It's a federal court process. So he, the owner, bought it at auction out of an auction run in Indiana and paid $12.5 million. Now but our understanding from people in the education field was that they thought they were buying an operating college, when in fact they were buying simply troubled real estate. So there has been a problem with the expectations, the owner's expectations. Now the value is probably maybe less than the $12 million that he paid. So we're assuming there's kind of a readjustment in thinking as to what might come forward. But it is in the master plan. You can see that the master plan group is considering a couple of these possible alternatives, again, privately owned. So those being more, I'd say, a more innovative housing solution than you often see. And number two, possibly a kind of a low intensity industrial type of thing. I think the master committee has preferred the residential.
The community as a whole did, and the economic consultants, everybody said that industrial really isn't that feasible, but a more modern type of housing and protecting the wetlands, connecting some of those key wildlife corridors and green spaces, and some innovative, really cool housing in that area.
So the industrial thing is not very realistic. The other thing that the consultants said, which, what we'd love is to have another college there, but what they're telling us is colleges are not expanding. If it's just not realistic to think that you're going to get another college. I mean, Daniel Webster, Southern New Hampshire University did, try to buy it, but they were only willing to pay, a few $1 million instead of the 12. So they bought a couple of buildings right next to the airport. But even those really, they're not really, I think they're running a little bit of a program there. But in the end, the college is not likely to take that over, unfortunately. Yes?
If there is going to be housing there, obviously the dormitories and things like that, if those are going to be rehab, will there be some sort of noise contingent inside their property, their deed? Because obviously it's on an airport and the growth of the airport's always important. I did that business for 30 years, so I know all about noise at airports and changes that come with time. And if you don't have some sort of covenant on the land, then these people all of a sudden, a jet lands at the airport, you have a big, a situation now where you need to get rid of an airport because.
Now, the first part of the question, the dorms are very troubled. I mean, they would not, if there were a housing solution, they would be raised. I mean, there's a lot of asbestos. If you go in there, I mean, the rooms are tiny, it would be a total redevelopment of the site. Now, as far as the noise thing, was that addressed in that?
Yeah, that's a great question and a great point. And working with the airport, who has been, airport board of directors, who's been part of this conversation, their number one thing is controlling for noise. And so actually in the existing ordinances, if you were to develop housing around the airport now within the land use code, you are required to build to a higher level of noise reduction standard. Yep, already. That was put in place maybe 3 or 4 years ago. And so the airport has said that is absolutely critical to rezoning this area to housing to allow for something like that to happen. And everybody has definitely gotten on board that that's an absolutely critical piece for good neighbors.
Yes, Maria.
So I do have a question
Because I know we're getting close to go back to school, and I know that Nashua is very diversity community. And then we've been having a lot of trouble because some of the language on the budget, state budget, is going to be becoming difficult for teachers and people working with students and people making moves. Do you have any plan to help teachers and people who we want to do strictly to use some of the language that was input on the budget? I just want to know if you guys have any plans to have anything there to help teachers make sure that I'm getting in trouble because of this language and because of this difficulties that is going to be coming soon.
So you're asking about a rider to the budget that was passed that defines what teachers can teach. Now, we don't run the school department, the mayor and the board of aldermen, but in my discussions with the school department, they're saying, they're trying to work through it. So that we can teach the history of the United States without violating any laws.
Yeah.
But the law is very ambiguous.
Yeah, because to be honest, Nashua, I feel like I'm part of Nashua. You know, I moved here from El Salvador 33 years ago, and Nashua was the first place I moved in. And Nashua is so diverse and so welcoming. We have so much diversity of cultures and people that I feel like these type of things that is not make us welcoming, is not make us feel like we're part of the community. And I just want to make sure that you've been doing an amazing job keeping us together and make sure that everyone feels welcome. But I just want to make sure that that language and, the welcoming is still there, so everyone should feel like Nashua and New Hampshire is still welcome to anybody, no matter where you are or no matter where you live.
Well, we've done, both I and the board of aldermen have worked very hard to make it clear that everyone in Nashua is welcome, that we value every single citizen, regardless of, how long they've lived here or whatever, and that is essential to a successful community. So thank you.
I have high regard for the police department and the fire department, or I have even higher regard for your efforts at Trish and Ernie to limit the growth spending of those. So thank you very much for that.
Well, our fire and police departments have done a great job for the city, and over a long period of time. The budgets for those departments have grown much more than the others, far more than the cost of living year after year. So this year, I think that, their mission is just to, do everything. But when you're managing a budget, you need to try to balance the need for services, the need for fair pay, with the ability of people, the citizens, to pay for it. And when we went into this tax year, it looked like we could have a 5 or 6% tax increase before we even get to the city budget. So it seemed very important. I thought it was very important to try to limit spending. So over the departments over which at least I had control, we made serious priority decisions. City Hall down 3%. Now, part of that is a reformed health plan that was adopted by different groups of employees within City Hall, which really benefits the employees and the city. But, I think we have to continue. I've been making the point, look, these budgets that go up more, the fire budget is up 27% in 6 years. So, it is a very important department, but we can't increase a budget 4% every year, year after year after year after year. We just cannot do that. How are we going to pay for that? And it means that money goes in that direction because there's a finite number of dollars. There's only so much we can spend. So to the extent we expand one budget, over and over and over again above the cost of living, it means that other budgets are gonna have to suffer, like schools. I mean, if we have issues that need to be discussed. Teachers in Nashua make, average $61,000. We're 50th or 51st of the districts in New York. And that's a big, that's a big item of the budget. But if anything, teachers are underpaid. On the other hand, reality is a firefighter makes $100,000 so an average. So I mean, these are people who work. They all work very hard for the city. All need to be paid fairly, but everything needs to be considered. What's fair pay? How much can we spend on any one service to the exclusion of the others? And how much can the taxpayers afford? So that's why I try to limit those departments and persuade them that, could we get 1 year of the cost of living? Could we do that once? And the answer was no. but we'll continue to work on that, and I think maybe we can make progress in the future years. Yes, you.
I just want to say that as a citizen of this city, that I think I get good bang for my tax dollars buck around here. My trash and recycling gets picked up every week curbside. I have roads that I can drive on most of the time. I mean, but then they're on schedule to be budgeted, to be fixed. We have good schools. We have solid schools. Our kids are going to wonderful colleges. They have plans for their future. And if kids are struggling, we are working to try and fill those gaps and do what we can for them. We have a wonderful parks system. And I was sitting at Greeley Park last night listening to a bluegrass band, and it's certainly not the music that I listen to, but I got to expand my horizons for free, to sit at the park and enjoy it, and it wasn't raining, at least at that point, right? I think, it always comes round. We always have discussions about, limiting taxes, and that's an important balance, and you're absolutely right. But I think we have a lot to be proud of in this city. I think that we have done a good job of riding out the pandemic. We've taken care of citizens. Our health department has been vigilant in doing what they can to support us as citizens, to open up and give us opportunities for recreation in the midst of problems, and we had good leadership at City Hall. And I really appreciate, and I wanted to say that while I'm sending my check in, or my mortgage company sends my check in for my taxes, I'm happy to pay my part to make sure that this is a place that I can live, that my adult children want to bring their kids back to live here, and that we have a city that is well regarded, even outside of our little city limits, right? So I just want to say that I appreciate all the hard work that city employees do. I'm a city employee myself, I'm a teacher, but I want to say that I appreciate being part of the team that makes Nashua a good place to live.
Well, thank you, and thank you for all the hard work. Thank you for all the hard work you and your colleagues did during the pandemic. Now, we want to conclude by 9 o'clock because we'd like you to come back, as people say that are going to, we want you to come back, but if we go more than an hour, they might not. So I'm going to for one question, and then I will address Judy's.
So I know that you had mentioned the tax increases and the education budget. I was just wondering if the city has taken into consideration, I know that there was a deficit this year, is the city taking into consideration the millions of dollars that the school district got in CARES Act funding, referencing this specific year?
Yes. Now those funds are very restricted. So we frequently talk with Garth McKinney and Dan Donovan about how they plan to use those funds, but a lot of it is, one-time expenditures. Some have been used to upgrade the technology and other HVAC and other kind of things that can't be used for operations. So it's a sort of a moving target. Now back to Judy. Thank you, and for all the hard work the teachers have done. I will conclude with just a couple things. First, I didn't mention that the city got recognized as the fourth best run city in the United States. As far as our tax rate goes, taxes are very high in New Hampshire. That's the system we have, or we're given, let's put it that way. Because huge amounts of, there's very little, I think in the proportion of state and local taxes, the amount that's property taxes is the highest in the United States. But Nashua's tax rate is actually the lowest of the cities in New Hampshire, but for Portsmouth. Portsmouth is kind of an outlier because the real estate values have gone up so much that the houses are worth so much that they actually probably are paying more on a lower rate. There are $2 million condos being built in downtown. So, anyway, thank you all for coming. If you believe in local control of the police commission, Asma is here. If you'd like to put that on the ballot, Asma is here. And we really appreciate your coming because we want to have a vibrant community conversation, and we really appreciate everyone's input. And we'll probably have another one next month, and we'll let you know.
Would you be interested in signing this? I'm going to get a petition and signature. Okay, did you sign it already? No, but I'm going to have you do a petition. Yeah, so you have to sign someone else's. Oh, okay. You got it? So you talk to us about I can ask him if I can do that. Did you sign up?
I'm turning it off now.